Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with another podcast about the NFL draft and the underrated picks or the underrated drafts that these NFL teams have. And I think for the most part, there are a lot of uncertainties about any draft, but this draft has a lot of uncertainties and a lot of underrated players that I think will turn out to be good players, more even so than the projections. So I think the Atlanta Falcons had a good draft, an underrated draft. I mean, they picked up Avion Terrell from South Carolina. He's been a pretty good player in college football for a while. I think he'll help shore up that defensive backfield that they have. And they picked up Zachariah Branch, who was a highly recruited college player out of Georgia, and he transferred over. But I think he'll be a good addition to Kyle Pitts if he can be more consistent this year. That's been his problem with the consistency, but if he can pick up the consistency, also Drake London as well, his ascension in the league and what he's trending to or his trajectory is pretty high, um, especially with they picked up Jaleel Dotson and they still have Bijan Robinson. So they have nice pieces on the offensive side of the football, and they're trying to get better on the defensive end, which they were pretty solid. They wasn't bad, but it's just the offense, just a lot of culmination of things with them trying to get a team together because they're a very young team and they have young coaches. And the biggest problem is probably their quarterback room, having two left-handed quarterbacks in Tua and then Michael Penix Jr. So they have a lot of things to figure out there. So it's going to be kind of odd as we always think about the left-handed quarterbacks and the success rate of those. I mean, if you think about a Michael Vick, and there's not really a lot of other left-handed quarterbacks that you can say that have been prominent or successful in the NFL. So they'll have that to deal with as well. But I thought they had a pretty underrated draft and picking up Harold Perkins as well. I know he had the injury history, but being a player from any kind of caliber playing for LSU, they're going to be well coached. They've played in the biggest of games that you can play in up into the NFL. So these guys can practice well. They're going to be very disciplined. They're going to be very talented, and then of course they was very skilled to be drafted out of LSU, and even to be recruited from LSU, you have to have some kind of pedigree to where you can have a skill set that will transfer over to the NFL. So I think Harold Perkins would do good if he can stay healthy in the league. And I think the Falcons took a flyer on him, and it's a high, low risk, high reward type of pick, especially picking him later in the rounds. But the pick that I think, or the team that had the best underrated picks to strengthen their strengths, had to be New Orleans, because I think they had an underrated draft because while they didn't get the quarterback that they wanted, which I think they're going to try to strive for next year probably, because the quarterback class will be a lot deeper next year. I think that they've got all the requisite pieces to help that quarterback when he comes on, or maybe they'll trade for one eventually this season. But I think they have all the necessary pieces, because I don't think Tyler Show is the answer, but I do think um, them drafting Jordan Tyson, which he had the injury history as well, but I think with their training staff and with the diet and the stuff they'll be able to give him, he'll suit better in the NFL because they just have more resources. They have way more investment. They have way more, um, just all around better staff to help him stay healthy. So I think he'll be able to do that. But then they have Oscar Delp too from um, the tight end from Georgia, who I think will do well as well. Since they don't have Taysom Hill anymore, he can play kind of that role of a Taysom Hill. He's a very flexible tight end that can play in out of the backfield, or can play at the line of scrimmage, or you could even put him in a slot sometimes. So he's very durable and very versatile player that they have. But an underrated pick they had was Barry Brown, which, he was at Kentucky and then he went over to LSU and he kind of got lost in the shuffle on those LSU players. And I think it hurt his draft stock a little bit. But I think he's one of the fastest players in this draft that came out, and he can get help with that deep ball speed, pause, um, i.e., what a Rashid Shaheed did. And I'm still kind of baffled that they traded Rashid Shaheed, but they did get draft capital and stuff like that. But I think Varian Brown substitute for that need of what they had of having that down the fall, down the field speed. and down the field asset that they had with Rashid Shaheed. Also, they can put him on a kick return and a punt return, so you can use him in a myriad of ways. Even maybe line him out of the backfield in a flex back kind of type of situation. So I think Barry Brown has that skill set. And then they got Georgia defensive tackle Christian Miller, which any player out of SEC, especially on that defensive side of the football, is going to be very disciplined, well coached, ready to ascend to that next level. And their skills transfer a lot because of the competition that they have. They're playing essentially other NFL talents year round. So all of those SEC players are pretty much prepared to go already. They just need to learn the plays and learn some of the nuances of the league. But most of those players are easily transferable and ready to go to the league. So I thought Pittsburgh had a good draft as well. Drafting Drew Aller from Penn State, big body type quarterback, i.e., a Ben Roethlisberger, who they had a couple years ago. I think Drew Aller, they have a lot of questions about him and his skill set, but I think he will do better under the coach Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy's, he's coached some of the best, where Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. He had Joe Montana in Kansas City, so he had a lot of different quarterbacks that he can train and he can get to the next level. Now, if you made this pick with a Mike Tomlin, who's more a defensive coach, it might not make much sense. But since you have a more offensive minded coach now, you have a more offensive based team now, even though Pittsburgh can arguably be always a defensive based team. I think Drew Aller can learn in this system, especially with his experience in college coming out of Penn State and coming from that program. I think he'll do well under that system, especially as I don't think he will learn much from Aaron Rodgers because I don't think Aaron Rodgers will be willing to coach him or give him the nuances of the league of playing quarterback position. So I think he'll pretty much have to learn from other people on that roster. But for the most part, I think the coach will coach him up and they'll have a replacement when Aaron Rodgers leaves because Aaron Rodgers, we know, is on his pretty much last leg. So they have to think about the future. Unlike what Green Bay was doing, they didn't think about their future and just pretty much let them run up to the sunset. Pittsburgh did the same thing with Ben Roethlisberger before he left. So I think they're learning from the mistakes of the past, of the recent past as well. So I think they did a good job with drafting Drew Aller and at least trying it out. Because the worst, like most of these picks, is um, low risk, high reward. So I think that's one of those type of picks. But I think Drew Aller, they liked his prototypical quarterback size and his big arm and what he can do for the team, especially be able to get the football down the field. So it was a good pick for them at that situation. And then they picked up Jeremy Bernard as well from Alabama, a very good possession type receiver. He's not going to be a down the field threat, but he can definitely have sure hands and catch the short intermediate passes, and he can do well for that team getting the football down the field. And of course, Tennessee, I think they had a good draft, drafting Carnell Tate, trying to strengthen the pieces that are around their quarterback, Cam Ward, and what they're trying to do. And this is just a pick just to show Cam Ward, hey, we're invested in you. It's your time. Let's see what you can do now. We're giving you these pieces, and we're going to try to make sure you're in the best spot that what you can be in. So there's no excuses. And then they picked up Anthony Hill Jr. as well on the defensive side and Keldrick Falk to tighten up their defense. Once again, it's two SEC type defensive players that I think will make noise and will grow together as teammates and be able to be great pieces on a young defense and a pretty good defense. I think that just their offense wasn't able to move the football as much and put them in tight positions. But I think they will be a little bit better off this year with Cam Ward being more acclimated to the offense and the speed of the NFL and just being able to adjust to it all. So, of course, Dallas and Philly had good drafts, but, all of these picks are wait to see. There's no surefire picks ever, really, unless you want to say Peyton Manning back in the day or somebody like that. But for the most part, the NFL is a different monster. So everybody has to get on that field and prove it. So until next time, I'll see you next time.